So basically 2 shells have just went off 2 minutes ago, and that's less than an hour after the ISIS attack. That's all Western Daesh behind us. There's thousands of them. That's one out there with a ram and a baby. And what can you say? Look at them. So this is all Western ISIS that the Kurds and the administration's having to deal with. This is a massive problem,
Alan, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Chris, thank you.
You're in a rush to get out the country, I believe.
Yeah, I should have been flying out 4 days after the lockdown started. So obviously everything's been on hold. So now return trip, but obviously this is probably the most stressful trip yet, to be honest, because there's just so many factors involved in it.
Yeah, I was going to say, when I leave the country, I'm awful. I need 2 days to pack, and I'm not talking about going on holiday here for people listening, although I'm pretty bad at that as well. I mean, going on any sort of expedition, I have to have everything kit mustered, laid out, double checked, batteries, MP3 player loaded up. Have I got, my phone numbers backed up, all this sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I can't imagine you're going to a war zone. That must be a whole nother stress again.
It is, because you've got to remember, because you're in a war zone, you can't just go picking up the stuff, and you just can't go picking it up willy-nilly. And during the process of this, obviously it'd been my first documentary. I'm suddenly in the middle of Syria, having to find batteries, having to find secret cameras, having to find extra GoPros, stands, and all the rest of this. So yeah, it is a bit, yeah.
And so, tell us, just if you see me making notes, I'm not. So if you see me looking down, I'm not being.
No.
Just I've thought of something I really want to ask, and I don't want to forget it. So.
No, that's fine. It's fine. I know. I know exactly.
But did you come from a military background then?
Yes, I served in the Queen's Own Highlanders. Then I got out of the army, missed it, and I ended up rejoining Royal Irish Regiment. So I was basically Royal Irish Regiment. A lot of the older guys would know it as the UDR. So I worked at Armagh for a lot of years as well.
In Armagh?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Northern Ireland, I worked Belfast, Fermanagh, but with the Royal Irish Armagh Home Service.
What sort of years was that then? Was that during the Troubles?
Yeah, first tour was 85 in Fermanagh, actually.
Whoa.
So yeah. Yeah, I've got and then I had the break. I got out in what was it? In the 91, just after the Gulf. And then I ended up rejoining. And funnily enough, the route that I went for the rejoining, I ended up when I was doing my training at the bridge, I did my training at Juniors, Bridge of Don. And my company commander during my training ended up being a company commander in the battalion as well. And then when I ended up rejoining the Royal Irish, he was the route that I went through for that. So, yeah, Major Wimberley.
My gosh. So were you when you were over the water, was that with you the Scottish regiment or the Irish?
Well, I had a couple of postings. I had Fermanagh and West Belfast Turf Lodge when I was regulars. And then when I was Royal Irish, it was obviously Armagh. You just worked there all the time. So you'd live. I mean, you didn't live in the same area you worked, but a lot of the guys actually did. So you do your shift, go home 24 hours or whatever. But if an incident happened, then obviously that 24 hours could turn into 48 hours or whatever, you know? So yeah, it was, yeah.
Did you see a lot of incidents?
Yeah, enough. One in particular stands out with me. I in LA went and shot him in a car park. Yeah, he was a retired RUC, and they shot him in front of his wife. Walked up behind him, and the guy ended up did less than 2 years under the Good Friday sellout.
Yes. Doesn't really come much more savage, does it, than some of the stuff that's gone on there? And
yeah,
I can imagine it must be terribly upsetting for the families of victims to see what.
Of course, it takes a toll on you as well. I mean, I was affected. I went through some dark times, let's say.
Yeah, I bet. Was that before you went to work in Syria or?
Yeah, it came to a crunch in sort of 2000 actually. But yeah, but you know, I'm no different to many other squaddies. You know, we've all, you know, whether it be Gulf, Northern Ireland, Afghanistan, you know, so many of us have went through it, and you know yourself, sometimes you have to get as low as you can go into that darkest place, and you've got to be able to come out of it. There's only one way to go after that, and that's up. And sadly, just too many just aren't, especially just now, too many aren't making it.
Yeah, there's so many unknown quantities there for me that I'd love to know what's going on in someone's head when they're you know, just about to take their own life.
Yeah.
For the reason that maybe I could understand it better and I could help people better. You see, it's all well and well, I say it's all well and good. It's probably not the right expression, but I mean, I come back from some serious trauma, but my trauma was from my younger years, you know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which doesn't make it any less. I personally think it's more because when you're young, you can't make sense of trauma because you're too young. So you internalize it. You know, you just think this life's fucking hard, you know, and maybe there's something wrong with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know how it is to be in a combat zone. I mean, we come under contact a few times in Northern Ireland, and if I was honest, I really enjoyed it. But I was 19, you know, that's what I wouldn't, even though the guy behind me got shot 3 times, it didn't affect me in any way whatsoever. I just felt fearless over there, if I was honest.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's a different thing to be in a convoy and a jeep or a armored personnel carrier gets blown to high heaven and you've got 5 mates in it. That, you know, that's a completely different scenario, Alan, and I won't pretend I could even understand it.
I think everybody's got their own own way. It affects everybody obviously different, but then it's when you're coming out of it, it's, for me, it was the how to learn to deal with it, how to, and I can deal with it. I mean, obviously, you know, I mean, I've got, even now, I've still got the PTSD. And, but funnily enough, I mean, especially with the Peshmerga, even on a front line in that, I mean, for me, I was more, for me, it was about being back with your mates, been there in the shit, and been with that comradeship where, with obviously the different languages and what have you. I mean, you know, my Kurdish is crap, you know what I mean? But just that one look and been with your brothers in arms, there's nothing like it. And so for me, everything was about learning how to deal with it, how to cope with it. And I do it in my own way. I can't set my mind has to be busy all the time. I have to be focused on something, or I go back into that dark place. You know, it's, so I think it's for everybody's got their own way. Everybody has got their own way, and yeah, sorry.
Is it? No, you're explaining very well, Alan. Is it one particular incident that triggers you? Is it a combination of just seeing war?
There's a combination, but for me, I can obviously now, I can deal with the war side of it because you're with your mates. For me, a lot of it is when I'm sitting there myself and my mind just isn't busy on something, and I go back into that, if you know what I mean. I have to, that's why I always have to be busy. My mind has to stay busy. I can't sit just, I have to be focused on something, really focused, because that keeps my mind in a safe place for me.
Yeah.
So for me, it's all about, but it's not about any one thing. It's a combination, and my mind just,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I've been there. I've been at that lowest point where I'm lucky to be here now. I've been there twice. And then, but then there was only that one way up. And for me, I just now deal with it in my own way. It has to be in my own way. I can't do it any other way.
Could you describe the spiral? How did you get down to that place? I'm assuming you were back in the UK.
Yeah, but this is all going back to sort of 98 and stuff. It's not now. It's as in, what I'm meaning is it's not, that lowest space for me started back in the late 90s. And I can't really put, I've got close to 2 years that I'm very, very much a blank on. I didn't see it. And I'll never forget, we were on QRF one night and we were sat in Armour, and my platoon commander, who was a colour sergeant, and he'd came from the 1st Battalion and joined 8. And I'll never forget, it was like 4 in the morning, 3 in the morning or something. And I was just sitting up. I was just sitting there, and I'll never forget, he went for a piss, comes back, and he just looked at me and he's like, "Look, Alan, you need to go and see somebody. I can see it. You need to see somebody. You know what I mean? There's nothing to be ashamed of, but I can see that you've got PTSD." And I was like, "Fuck off," as you do, like, you know. But back then, as you know, it was also, you didn't get that. It wasn't as free to accept and go and admit back then as well. It was only just starting, I think, to come out, if you know what I mean. Sorry, could I just sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
So yeah, for me, it was all a combination. There's no one sort of point that it all, you know. And then before I knew it, I was, yeah.
Were you drinking a lot?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a killer,
Yeah.
isn't it? If you chuck alcohol in a mix.
I think it seemed that the way I mean, anybody from, I mean, even soldiers now, we were always heavy drinkers, especially when you join a Scottish or a Northern Irish battalion in particular, So drink was always a big thing, but then you started to use, I started to use it as that pillar to try and, but again, that it did nothing. It made it worse and worse, and I just didn't realize. And that's why now I've not had a drink in
A long time.
Probably since New Year's, and even then it was only probably a bottle of champagne or something. But I'm one of these that now, if I go for a bevy, I can't stop at 1 or 2 pints. I've got to go the full hog. But then that starts putting you back. So it's better now just not even, you know what I mean? It's now I was a heavy drinker for a long time, and it was a sort of coping mechanism. And don't get me wrong, I've been absolutely shit-faced. When I'll never forget, it was the worst I've been in a long time was end of 2016, and me and this photojournalist, he'd been through this offensive with us, and we were finished. That was ISIS finished, done, finished, kaput. They were finished in Kurdistan. Final part of the Mosul battle was going on, and I just lost a friend, and we went and got, because we went off the front. It was like, right, now it's time, we'll start cutting the guys down. Right, Britannia, you fuck off, have some happy time in Erbil. And I'll never forget, that is the drunkest I've been in many years. But both of us ended up doing it. But with everything that we just needed to release that steam. So
yeah. So how come then, Alan, if you've already been through the mill, what was it made you pick up arms again and go? So you went out, you joined what, the Peshmerga?
Peshmerga, yeah, Peshmerga,
and they are fighting in Syria.
No, they're Kurdistan, Kurdistan, Iraq, northern Iraq.
I'm just checking a map because I'm sure there'll be people listening that are as confused as I am. So you've got the Kurds, who are the world's largest people without a country.
Yeah.
They spread across Turkey, Syria, and Iraq.
And Iran.
And Iran.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because I've driven to India and back, and so I've been through these territories. They're kind of like a mountain, desert stroke mountain people.
Yeah, I actually we had a unit of Iranian Peshmerga volunteers with us, Parti Azari, Kurdistan, and they got a lot of females with them. I think I sent you some photos. And yeah, they're true warriors, true warriors. But all the Kurds are warriors. They've got that spirit. I mean, the Peshmerga, it stands for those who face death. They fought against Saddam. They've seemed to have spent their whole history fighting. They're surrounded by this mentality. The Kurds are very secular people, but they're surrounded by this mentality that just, whether it be Turkey, whether it be the Iraqis, the Iranians, the Syrians, the Syrian government, yeah,
they just get picked on, don't they? Because they don't conform, I suppose. But
there seems to be a lot of many. There's a saying, when you go into Kurdistan, set your clock forward 1400 years. If you because they're surrounded by this mentality. Especially, they've got the Iranians on one side, you know, and the Iranians, they've got the Turks on another side who are supposed to be NATO allies. You've got that Baghdad's not as bad, but the problem you've got just now is the Iranian influence within Iraq. There has the Shabi groups and what have you. And then also you've got them now, they've got the northeast of Syria. The Turks have partly invaded, and the Turks weren't attacking ISIS when they attacked last year. They were attacking the Kurds who fought against ISIS from day one. You know, it's a crazy, over 250, 300,000, or if not more, Kurds got displaced. It's crazy. And I was in the likes of Al Hol, where there's 65,000 ISIS getting held. Whether that's there's 11,000 Westerners, the rest of them are Iraqi and Syrian. And I'll tell you, the reaction from ISIS at that time was because if the Turks get them, they're free. Literally, the Turks are putting them on a plane home here just now, and then they're getting back here, and there's no charges for them. Samia Hussein got back. I interviewed her last year in Al Hol. She got back in February, for God's sake. She's not been charged. She married an ISIS fighter. You know something? She lost her arm in an airstrike, part of her breast and her leg. She's probably getting better treatment on the NHS at the minute than vets that fought for their country and lost limbs for their country. That's what we're facing. Sorry, I've got off track there, haven't I?
No, you make a valid point, and I just would like people at home to realize this is an agenda. It's done for a reason. The reason that certain ethnicities in our country are allowed to run wild and do, you know, these horrendous acts is because it's creating division. And it's divide and conquer, it's actually divide and rule. I'm
not going to go along that lines because, I mean, the government has stripped the likes of Jack Letts, for example, of his citizenship. It seems to be, a lot of it seems to do with, you've got to remember, we've got the human rights and all the rest of this in Europe and in Britain. Now, you've got to remember, for a trial, you've got two Beatles have just been sent back to, been extradited from Syria to America at the minute. Now, the condition of that they were jihad, you know, the jihadists were beheading the likes of Alan Hennon, David Haynes, James Foley.
Yeah.
Well, the Beatles have the two of them have just been charged and are going to stand trial in America. Now, part of that extradition was they don't face the death penalty. That was part of the, you know, because of the human rights and all the rest of this. But Britain should have said, well, they've killed your citizens, you put them on trial under your bloody laws. You know what I mean? You want to hang them? Hang them. You want to put them on the chair? Put them on the chair. But no, we have to put a condition that affects the justice. Now, you've got every single Western ISIS I've interviewed. They are screaming to get back to the UK. Now, under our laws and under Europe, you wouldn't be able to use half the evidence against them, if any of it, that's come from Syria and from Iraq. You wouldn't be able to get the witnesses across here. There's so many different factors. And I think that's what, but at the same time, every single Westerner that joined ISIS joined a prescribed terrorist organization. Now, why have they at least not been charged with that? At least with that, because it's clear. Samia Hussein, for example, the British government and all this have said, we're investigating her. Right, I'll tell you right now, oh, you're investigating them, or are you? I spent 5 days talking to her to get her on camera over 2 days. Has anybody approached me from UK security, UK justice, UK government? No. And I'll tell you right now, she married an ISIS fighter. She actually divorced him in a Sharia court. That means she's got power across there. But I clicked on that she was more than she was letting on anyway, to be honest. But I'll not go too much into it.
No, I mean, I'm just searching for answers in this world, because someone needs to look a bit further than the BBC 9 o'clock news, right?
That's why I went to the documentary. You've got right. I went from fighting against them. I'm used to seeing them in a scope of rifle, and even the British government had a bigger problem with me than they got return on ISIS on that one. But that's another story. But anyway, I'm used to seeing these pigs through a scope. But then it was an ISIS fighter we captured, and he was sitting there. It was actually during the middle of a battle, and he was crapping himself. He thought, well, that's me, I'm finished. But he didn't realize that we go by the Geneva Convention, obviously. You know what I mean? So, you know, it's what it is. So anyway, I'll never forget. And I said to him, we've got him sat there, hands tied behind him, blah, blah, blah. And I turned around with my Terp, my friend Ali, and I was like, right, I need to ask him. And I was like, why? And, you know, you've got this whole town destroyed. And I'm like, why? What was this? What the hell was this for? And you know what he said to me? He said, ISIS captured Mosul. There was no government, there was no money, there was nothing. The only way for me to feed my family was join Daesh. And also he started going on about Hasta-Shabi, the Iranian groups. And you know something, I can understand, because I've interviewed and sat and spoke to many ISIS prisoners from Syria, from Iraq. I can understand them more, but it's a local thing for them. So they haven't joined. For a lot of them, they haven't joined purely because of the ideology. They've joined maybe because of money, because they've been insulted by Hasta-Shabi, because the tribal leader has given the tribe over. There's many different reasons, but the Westerners are 100%. They joined for the Sharia, for the Caliphate, Dawla Islami, as they call it, as they put that. You know what I mean? They joined 100% because they believed 100% in the building of that Caliphate. They're actually, in many cases, there's more extreme. All the beheadings of Western hostages that you saw, done by Westerners.
Yeah, I'm going to come on and talk about that, because something was.
Sorry, I do kind of go on.
my point is they're not going to be prosecuted when they come back to this country, because
no.
The money, that what I call the money mafia, the people that run the whole planet, they want fighters to go out there. They want to fund this conflict. They want the fighters to then come back to the UK, and for the British people to be upset, and for
I don't go along any of that. And that the reason I've spent these people, Western ISIS, are pure and simple because they believe in the Caliphate. I've seen all the other stuff and all the rest of this, but the reality is what's going on the ground. And, you know, there's no funding from the West. There's no this. I've seen this arming from the West. All the Western arms that you see ISIS with came from when they captured Mosul. Now, that stems back to Maliki at the time, who was Maliki was actually close to Iran, always very close. It was, for him, it wasn't about Iraq. It was about the Sunni Shia. Now, Maliki, there's a good friend of mine, a guy called General Noruddin. He's fought against ISIS from long before they were called ISIS. Anyway, he was telling me about phone calls he was getting from other generals in Mosul, crying on the phone because Maliki told the 2 divisions to retreat from Mosul. It was only been attacked by 800 to 1,000 Western by ISIS. However, by that pullback all the way back to Baghdad, it brought the West back in, because obviously the West's like, shit, we've got to stop this. But it also allowed Iran and its Hastashabi back in to Iraq in force. So all of this has stemmed from across there. ISIS only started, did you know ISIS only started off in one village? They were basically ex-Baathists and what have you. And they saw the civil war going on. They're like, holy shit. So because they were mainly ex-Iraqi army and what have you, they went across to Syria and they started building because they bought training, they bought experience. Yeah, they bought all of that. But come Mosul, 2 divisions of equipment got captured by ISIS. American equipment that had been sold to the Iraqi army. A lot of this problem stems from we pulled out of Iraq too soon. As much as it's a political expediency, we should pull out too soon. Are you saying
you don't think ISIS has been funded by anybody, let alone, I don't like to call it the West, because to me the world isn't run by West and East or this country or that. It's run by the money criminals.
No, I mean, they captured 800 million, for example, and they captured $800 million from a bank in Mosul. Yeah. They've been selling oil from the oil fields that they captured in Syria to the Assad regime, and by the convoy load through Turkey, again through Turkey. You know,
where did they?
This is internal.
There was that famous scene where they're all driving Toyota pickup trucks, right?
Captured.
Wow.
All of that was captured. You've got to remember that they were taking towns, they were taking cities. There was local deals done with local tribes. Now, part of the speed of ISIS was to do with, there was a lot of tribes in advance were basically swearing allegiance to ISIS. So they'd be going into whole areas. Mosul, for example. Mosul is one perfect example. They had people in there. And to be honest, a lot of the people in Mosul saw ISIS and many other places as basically, when it comes to across there, you've got to forget the Western way of thinking. Across there, the Iraqi government and Maliki was treating the Sunnis like dirt. They couldn't get jobs. They couldn't get anything. So when ISIS came along, they were like, well, it can't be any worse than Maliki. You know what I mean? So they were like, right, we'll support it because it's, again, the Sunni Shia thing. Whereas the Westerners have joined purely because of the caliphate and the Sharia and the, you know what I mean? There's a total complete difference.
So let me put it to you then, Alan.
Do you know the Kurds? They're Sunni. They're the same religion as ISIS, yet the Kurds are the ones that fought from day one. And to be honest, they've been the front line against ISIS from day one. But it's not only Kurds. The Kurds don't see it as religion. They just see it as humanity. You've got Kurds. You've got a few Christians, not too many, because they like everybody else to do the fighting for them. You've got Yazidis that are units with them. You've got Shabaks that are with them. So, you know, the Kurdish forces are very, very mixed. And they've got Arabs as well, local Arabs with them as well.
So going back to the UK thing, why do you think these fighters are coming back here and they're not getting prosecuted in any way?
Right. I think there's a couple of different reasons. I mean, I've obviously got a massive, massive issue with it because, to be honest, I've had not only me, but there's been others that fought against ISIS from Britain. We get more hassle than ISIS that return to this country.
Yeah, I'm aware of it.
I'm not joking. You know what I mean? But as for the ones that have returned, I think there's ISIS think long term, which, sorry, I'm getting off track here. With the Brit, I think the ones that are coming back to the West, because it's not only Britain this is happening in, it's France, it's Germany, it's all to do with evidence. It's all to do with our human rights. We can't bring there's, you know, a good defense lawyer is going to destroy evidence that's came across from the ground in Syria, in Iraq. But there's clearly not enough investigation been done. There's definitely not enough investigations. There should be some sort of panel set up like there was for the Nuremberg trials to investigate this, because the Westerners, now another thing as well, especially the Western women, everybody thinks the likes of the Yazidi sex slaves were just abused by the fighters. Trust me, in many cases, Western women were involved in the abuse, because you've got to remember, when the fighter goes back to the front, who's the boss? It's the female. It's the woman of the house, and she treats the women were treating the Yazidi sex slaves and others were in many cases worse than the men were, believe it or not, and that's come from Yazidis themselves, because obviously, you know, I rescued a Yazidi from Al Hol. You know, she was held by ISIS for 5 years.
What does Yazidi mean, mate?
All right, Yazidi is a religious group across in northeast Iraq, the Nineveh Plains area. So, you know, they live side by side. They're basically, it's a religion that goes back thousands of years. And in all honesty, as much dealings as I've had with the Yazidis, I mean, I've been in their religious, you know, their Lalouche, their most holiest of place, and I have a lot of dealings. But even now, I don't kind of understand the Yazidi religion. For them, it's about colors. It's not. There's so many different things. Even I have trouble understanding their religion. But you know, they're harmless people. They just want left in peace. And they're seen as devil worshippers by ISIS. That's why ISIS treated the Yazidi more than there's countless mass graves. The ISIS came in, pretty much did exactly the same as in fact, it's almost like they copied them. As the Nazis did to Jewish towns, cities, and villages. They separated the women, children, the men, and boys over a certain age. The men went away, they were put into mass graves, stood over the graves, and there's still now mass graves been found. Then the women, as the world has seen, women and children were then sold. Some of the younger children were actually forced into ISIS and became brainwashed because they were so young.
Yeah.
It's what's happened to them. And, you know, also, people forget with ISIS, if you're not with ISIS, you're against them. It doesn't matter your age, your sex, your religion. It doesn't matter.
How strong are they then? How many people strong are ISIS now?
It's hard to put a figure on it just now. They are, the coronavirus has actually given them a breathing space. They have started, especially in Iraq, they've started again kidnapping because they're raising funds. They've started more ambushing on Iraqi army and the Iranian groups as well, because there's this there's this space as well. There's this, you know, Iraq's just such a big country. They're still strong. Are they making? It's almost like back to the insurgency days pre-2014. But they are strong. And if anybody thinks they aren't, then they'll be doing online recruitment, which seemingly they are doing. They're doing online recruitment again in the West.
So can we talk about your role in action then? How did you become a sniper? Well,
I wasn't a sniper in the British Army. I was just a marksman. I got qualified marksman. But because of our training, I mean, I shot more rounds in probably a week on the ranges than, I mean, I was on the SLR, trained on the SLR initially as well before the SA80. So our training, that's a skill, that's the sort of training we got as British soldiers or what have you, is what they, you know, the Kurds could dream of. You also, I mean, I was having to teach some of them how to do zero a Dragunov, for example. You know, they'd have a sniper rifle, but they didn't even know, some didn't even know how to zero the rifle because it, you know, it just looked good for them. You get what I mean? So basically, when I got across there, again, it was a guy called General Noradin, actually. He'd spent a lot of time in, and he's got a mental reputation amongst the Americans and what have you. And he spent a lot of time, he was actually the coordinator with the SF teams that used to come in as well. But he's the one that got me to 7 Brigade. And obviously he understood the skills and what have you. But I'd also spent a lot of time before that on the lead up to help and train Peshmerga. So they knew I could shoot. So it comes down to bringing skills that we've got as soldiers. And the British infantry, the training that we got is second to none. You know, that, so you're bringing them skills with you.
We'd all be considered snipers, wouldn't we, at our level of competence?
Literally any British soldier, but yeah, literally any British soldier would be, because it comes down to our training. We've had more range time in a week on the ranges than some of these guys have had in, you know, 12 years, 20 years. You know, that's the reality of it. And what used to happen occasionally, actually, was I'd have to prove it to certain people, you know. And I'll never forget, there was this one time, right, and there was this captain. And he was, because everything's about face across there and all the rest of this. And he's like, Britannia Kurnos, you can shoot. And I'm like, So anyway, he took a couple of shots at this target that was like, it was about 150 meters away or something, you know. We're just in the valley, just at the back of the front, like. And I was like, is that the case, is it? So, and funnily enough, the reason I was there anyway was I was actually doing a check zero. And there was this, I had a target already set up on this rock, and it was like 300 meters away. And I was like, yeah, okay, yeah. So I actually stood up and took the shot, bang, took it out. Then I did the kneel, did the same again. And all of them were like, shit, okay, you can shoot. You know what I mean? So you had to prove that you know, but again, that comes down to British Army training, so second to none.
What weapon was that, Alan?
I used the Dragunov. I had a Russian Dragunov. Okay. And the round is it's 7.62 54R, so it's bigger than the SLR GPMG round for the British standard. I think it's a
longer round.
It's a bigger, thicker round. I think the one that we used in the British Army was R51, I think. But I had to use Russian ammo, not Bulgarian, Romanian, or whatever, because otherwise you always get the same stoppage. So you had to use the Russian ammo. There's definitely better ammo, like. So yeah, I used a Russian-made Dragunov.
And who provided you with that weapon?
Peshmerga.
Okay. And am I right in thinking there's sort of websites you can sign up for this organization and they arrange your transport, or?
No. Right. There's this fake, I call it a fake false facade, right? And it pretty much is. I fell out with most of these people because they didn't see, let alone fight ISIS. They were keyboard warriors doing all this recruitment online and all the rest of this. I could walk you right now into the Ministry of Peshmerga. You've seen, right, I could introduce you, and I've had the discussions, and all the generals are like, what's this bullshit on? There's a language barrier. Westerners use that language barrier. And they were recruiting and all the rest of these, but how do you think so many of them came across? There was a lot of people with fantastic, brilliant intentions. They wanted to fight ISIS. You ask them, how many of them actually lived on the front line and fought against ISIS as a Peshmerga? I'll tell you what, it's a handful. Because you couldn't just go across there. The Peshmergas, you know, the Peshmerga's got coalition training. It's part of the, you know what I mean? This was a thing by groups online. I'm not going to go too much into it, but the trolling that I've had from these Muppets is just beyond work. I've had more trolling from them than I have from ISIS. You get what I mean? But it's a bit of a myth about this online recruitment side. I know people that got across there and then they were totally ignored by these people, or you notice most of them, they only lasted a few months. Why? Because it wasn't what they were told it was going to be. They weren't getting on a front line. They weren't fighting. It was a big myth. There's this, I call it the fake false facade. That's what I call it. And trust me, it is. But everybody jumps on and they start, you know, to me, a photo, a video says 1,000 words. You ask these people for any of that. So you know, I've seen fake interviews in the press. I'll never forget one in particular, this guy, Ben, gives this interview. The attack he talked about happened 3 months earlier. You know what I mean? As for the abuse at shouting and swearing at the prisoners, don't give us that crap. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's another different side, a completely different side. I don't particularly want to get into that side because for me, I did my thing. I always do, and I still do my own thing. But yeah, as for this online recruitment, forget about it. A lot of it it's Facebook. That's all they were. All they were. Yeah. You know, don't get me wrong, though. There was some that actually did live on a front line and fight, but you'll find that they were people that went and did their own thing with the Pesh. They kept away from these groups and all the rest of this. That was the ones that actually did. But it's the same as, it's another story another story, Chris, sorry.
It's okay, yeah. I'm aware.
Sorry?
I'm aware that there's a lot of online politics. I know
very much.
Again, mentioning no names, but I know someone who's worked over there, and I've seen the kind of he'll put a post on Facebook and it just generates so many responses, and it's almost looks like teenagers bickering over an Xbox game or something, right?
I got into this mistake. There was an interview I was asked to do, and this guy, I was one of the very first to be a volunteer and fight against ISIS. Now, I came back, and there was this guy, suddenly he was on at me. He was trying to get me to do it. He was wanting to basically not only do recruitment, but he was basically they were wanting to do a bloody documentary, so I told them to F off, basically. Anyway, to cut a long story short, suddenly I'm getting all these messages, and I'm getting hundreds. How to recruit them. Now, something that I never, ever did was recruit people. Never. And I'd be a bit flippant sometimes. Maybe I was a bit, it's like, I get lunatics send me a message. I go hunting the weekend. I'm good on PlayStation or whatever, all this sort of stuff. And I'm ex-British Army, so I've got a bit of a smart arse attitude, but I kind of say it as it is as well. It's like, I'm not a babysitter kid. You know what I mean? And a response like that can get you trolled to hell for the rest of your days by that person. So I'd be like, listen, I'm not recruiting you. I'm not going to help you. I had to do it myself. You want to do it, then do it. But I would have been in a lot of trouble with the British even more if I was recruiting. But at the end of the day, if something happened to one of them, I'll never forget one day. I'll give you this one. I'll never forget this one day. This guy comes up to me, and I'm like, he's like, "Hi, I'm Dean. I'm American." I'm like, "Yeah." And I was packing my gear and all. I was packing my gear, and he's like standing over me. And I was just wanting to get on with what I was doing. Anyway, I says, "So, what did you do before this?" And he's like, "I was a surfer, man." I'm like, "What?" Anyway, that kind of summed up a lot of them. You know what I mean? But then there was an attack, ISIS attack one night, and before that, he started giving it, "I can fight, I can do this." And I'm like, "What, can you change the mag in the middle of a firefight?" Blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? I was just like, by this, that I was like, Jesus. Anyway, ISIS attacked and this guy hid, you know. There was guys getting across there. There's this guy, he was one of my worst trolls, actually. Claimed to be 3-para, but he didn't know his CO, let's just say. Anyway, I heard he did get across there, and he actually abandoned somebody in his very first fight, abandoned and did a runner, never to be seen again. You know, I'm not a babysitter, but if somebody, what if I took somebody across and they got killed? How can I explain that to his family? How could I live with that as well? You know what I mean? So it was never my place to do that. And I'm pretty disgusted by these groups. You know, and there's not only the recruitment side, money. That's a big one. Sorry, I'll go back to it. I was asked to do this piece, and it was this guy who was basically investigating for the Pesh. And he said, "Look, we need somebody to basically open the story up." So I spoke to the London Evening Express, I think it was. So I opened it up for him and said, "Yeah, there's a lot of this going on, a lot of that going on." Then he jumped in after that. It was basically to open it up for him. Anyway, the trolling that I got after that was shocking. There was a certain group on Facebook made claims about medical equipment sent to Bashika. I think it was £30,000, £30,000 worth. Well, I called this out because I was at Bashika, and I've actually got generals that are actually saying it as well. And David Eubank, Free Burma Rangers, even he was like, "What are they talking about?" So I called this out, this claim that they made. It never got there. Now, where did all that money go to? Nobody ever saw it. The only time I did see some medical equipment, they basically nicked it off an American that posted it across there, and it was lying in a heap on the floor. And then this group accused the Zeravani of stealing this equipment. They don't know that I was actually at this base because we were trying to get it to our area. And I was up there with a captain, and the general was actually on the phone with their major trying to sort out what was going on and all this stuff. The amount of stuff I could go into, it's a different story, and it's not really, it's just because you've mentioned that side. So I have to bring it up. But the trolling that I got for that, for maybe, you know, for not helping recruit, for calling out what was going on, has just been, you know, when, you know, even people connected to that, do you know what they actually did? They were sending rape and death threats to my missus, and they actually posted reward posters and my UK family address with photos of my house online. It wasn't ISIS that did that, it was them. And I will never, that's why come the book, I'll be calling a few out, and I look forward to them trying to sue me, because I've got generals, I've got people that destroy them. I'm not saying this just out of, you know, payback's a bitch.
On a slightly lighter note, I spoke to Dave Eubank this morning, and he sends his best wishes and all his love to you. He said, "You mean the Mad Scotsman?"
David is, he was with us a lot. Can I tell you a story about David, actually? And for people that, if you want to explain David's story, actually, before I do it.
Yeah, so Alan very kindly put me in touch with an incredible gentleman, Dave Eubank, David Eubank. If you want, I encourage everybody to watch the podcast I did with him this morning. He came to prominence in the media fairly recently, or in the last 2 or 3 years, because he carried out an incredibly brave rescue of a little girl that was under fire. And there was being careful what I say, because I'm going to get kicked off YouTube, but there was, let's just call it carnage all around her. I think you know what I'm trying to say. Like 70 carnages all around her, and Dave just ran out and he organized this rescue, and he got the Americans to put down smoke, and he got a local commander to lend them a vehicle. And yeah, again, either I've posted the podcast, so go and watch it, or I'm going to post it. So
did he tell you? Sorry, Chris, did he tell you? If you, on the full video, you see one of the guys that was his team that was given the cover and firing, and as he came back in, he started limping. He actually got hit. ISIS hit him in the bottom of his foot. So they did.
I gathered that.
Yeah, it's David Eubank and the Free Burma Rangers are. I've never, ever seen a group like them, and I wish all so-called NGOs, as I call them, were with like anything close to them. David is a truly, and it's all group. My good friend with Shaheen, he was a Yazidi translator for David. He got killed in Mosul as well, hit by a sniper. And David Eubank and the Free Burma Rangers are truly an amazing group that truly make a difference to no matter what your faith. And he's the strongest. But anyway, I'll give you a story on Dave. It was one night and a Pesh comes up and he's like, "Oh, Dr. Dave, dentist." And Dave's like, dentist are tough. Dave's like, "Yeah." And the guy's like, "Oh, yeah." And Dave just, I'm like, watching this night, Dave's suddenly like, grab a chair, says to his daughter, right? And it's pitch black. So anyway, next thing, they get this chair. And I'm like, "Dave, have you ever done dentistry before?" He says, "I've pulled a couple of dogs' teeth." I'm like, "Right, okay." So anyway, this guy pushes him back into this chair, and his daughter's got the phone out for light. She gives him this syringe. Next thing, the syringe is in this guy's mouth. Anyway, he missed the initial spot. So anyway, this guy's like screaming, trying to get out of the chair. Dave's pushing him back in. So eventually, suddenly, after he gets the injection, he's like, "Oh, it's basha, real good." So anyway, next thing, Dave's pulling out this tooth, and he slips. He's got his foot on the guy. The guy's trying to get out of the chair. Swear to God, one of the funniest things I've ever seen. It's one of these, I think you'd had to have been there to see it. But Dave in general, one of the bravest people I've ever come across. He's ex-Rangers, US Rangers as well.
Yeah,
Dave's
US Special Forces, Green Beret, as they to use the American word. I want to get back to your story though.
Sorry.
Alan, because I'm going to be honest, it's one of the most fascinating chats I think I've had in my life, and I know I'm going to be speaking for lots of people at home. How did you get to the front line then the first time?
For me, I sort of worked my way through, so I was basically helping train Peshmerga and what have you. So I was building up this. They were getting to know me.
How did you get in country? Is what I'm trying to say.
I just flew in. Yeah, I just flew in. I don't really go into all the details of all of that.
Well, it's probably best not to, isn't it? Otherwise,
you'll have. Even now, I still get people, "How do I join?" I'm like, "Oh, you're 5 years too late." You know what I mean? But yeah, I ended up getting across there, and it was basically, you need to start learning not only a bit of the language, but you have to learn the culture as well. And also, the Peshmerga had started learning that Westerners, they needed the babysitting, a lot of them. Not all of them, but again, there was a lot of babysitting. So that's why you don't see Pesh putting the whole, you know what I mean, the shebang in. They don't do all of that. In the end, I was the only Westerner allowed in 7 Brigade because they kicked out another. And the other one they kicked, in fact, they kicked out 2, sorry. One I was surprised about. I really liked him, actually. But again, it was about, you had to prove that you didn't need babysitting. And ex-British Army, our training, obviously, you know, we were used to the, you can't, I mean, so I didn't need the babysitting. So it was a lot of different things involved in it. And then eventually it's suddenly, right, we trust this guy, he doesn't need babysitting, he can get by. But obviously with my role, I worked a lot. I worked, you know, I only answered to the general. I didn't answer to anybody else but the general. So I'd come up and then be like, general would look at me, you know, I'd come walking into the base because I was wanting to get changed in a shower or whatever, and or come up for decent food because I heard that media were there, so there'd be decent food instead of the frontline rice and what have you, you know. And the general, he'd be like, where you been? Where you been? And I'd be like, oh, I've been down at Loafer, or I've been here. And he'd just like shake the head and he's like, okay, keep me informed, you know what I mean? But I pretty much had you know, I only really answered to him, but out of respect and all this, I would, you know what I mean, play the game, except we all have them. We've all came across them. Obviously, you get the odd, you know, the odd second Louis and all this, and he's like, go away, you lunatic, you know what I mean? And there was nothing that they could do, because it's like, once you're, because of the structure, it's a slightly different structure than it is, say, in the British or the American Army or what have you. The rank structures are a bit different. It's all by respect and a lot of different things. And even knowing what to call somebody Sadie, like a general would be Sadie, you know what I mean? It's like a different respect. So it's all of that you had to learn as well, but you had to prove yourself that you didn't need babysitting. And that was the problem. Too many, I know a whole group got booted. That Pesh just had enough. And it was like, get these guys out of here. You know, and a lot of the guys were jumping place to place because they were getting booted. That was the you know, you'll see these different groups and they're making on their this and that, but they were actually getting booted. That's the reality of it. The Pesh were like, and in the end, you know.
Did you go there, Alan, for the action, or did you go there because you wanted to make a difference?
I was about to say, I wanted to make a difference. There's a lot of different reasons. This isn't just sort of one reason. I'll never forget sitting watching what was going on across there. And I kind of realized that if they weren't stopped there, then it would become a bigger problem. So I wanted to make a difference. And, you know, I'll be totally honest, I did also miss that comradeship, that bond that only soldiers have. Which got me through this. It was that bond, even though it's different language, that bond and that look, just that one look without having to say something, that bond as well was part of it. And that's what helped me get through it, but also a firm belief that ISIS had to be destroyed.
Yeah.
On the front line, not on a keyboard, not sitting back wherever. They had to be destroyed there. And what I can't say and thank enough is the family support got me through it as well. My other half, I'm not going to say her name and that because of obviously trolls and what have you. But, you know, the support I got from her, not only during the Peshmerga, but this documentary side as well, is I can't thank her enough, and I owe her everything. You know,
did you get any like
trolling that she went through, And I'd like to add, whilst the worst of the trolling was going on, her mother was actually dying of cancer, and these trolls were, yeah. So
life can
me through all of that.
people
And
can be cruel, man, and they don't even realize how cruel they're being.
especially when it's, they're bringing in family, and they're bringing in, you got a problem with me, one of them groups, actually, he was, even though they still troll me, but I actually met him, and I turned around and I was like, and there's people that saw this that were there, and I turned around and I was like, right, you're off the keyboard now, come back to the back of the Humvee, we'll sort it out. And I was like, right, we'll sort it out here, man to man, square go. He shook in his boots. And then he was all trying to make on he was this friend whilst in that time he was there. And then after they left, back to that keyboard. That sums up your trolls. They're nothing face to face. Nothing. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Trolling was a big part of all of this.
Well, I can see it's affected you, Alan, and yeah.
Well, I get the last laugh because, as far as I'm concerned, I did what I said I was doing. I helped. Did I make a difference? It's not up to me to say, it's up to others. I carried on with what I was doing. I lived and I fought against ISIS alongside the Peshmerga. And I got many, many friends across there. And then I've now went on to the documentary side, and I've got what a lot of the world's media were screaming to get, but I'm not in that clique. So I'll not go too much into that, because we've obviously got the production company speaking to major channels as we speak. It's going to be on the American and British channel. We're in sort of last phases of everything, let's say.
Are you filming in 4K?
Yes.
Is that all in 4K, or I'm only asking from a fellow creator's.
Everything, I've kept everything in the 4K to keep it standard across the board.
Yeah. Because
if I was suddenly changing to the 8K and all that, I couldn't do the shopping and changing. And as I say, I had to learn as I went onto this. I'm suddenly in Al Hall, surrounded by 11,000 Western ISIS with no weapon, no guards. And I'm like, I wasn't expecting this. So suddenly I'm having to try and find bloody cameras and everything. It's like, but yeah, I kept everything across the board on the 4K. Yeah. And it was a lot of it was to do with the interlinking of batteries as well, and cards, yourself.
Yeah, of course. Just one a bit of a silly question, but do you get crazy paras and bootnecks over there wearing their berries, and is that
as in volunteers? Well, because I pretty much kept away from all these, from the tourists, as I call them. I never really saw that. I think there was an American guy actually that wore a beret, but I think he just wore the Peshmerga one. Sorry. I do know that there was a guy claiming to be X3 para that had these I think he wore a beret, but he wasn't X3 para. He didn't even know his boss after his 5 tours of Afghan. And his boss, is a guy called Stuart Tootle, and I've got his book Danger Close sitting there, because when he first joined the army, he was a second lieutenant and he was my platoon commander. I was his platoon operator. I was his I was the radio op. So I got to know Stuart very well. And when I turned around to this guy and mentioned Stuart, he's like, he didn't know who he was after 5, but I don't think at that time they'd even done 5 tours of bloody Afghan. But then what really got to me was he said that he'd done a marathon for a charity for Mark Wright, the Mark Wright Project. And he didn't realize that Mark's father, Bob, I'm friends with, and I actually went and met him in Edinburgh and gave him a donation to his charity at that time that was It's no longer going, but at that time it was going. So that really, really got to me as well. But any Walter Mitty always gets their stories, you know yourself, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, but there was a lot of the Walter Mitty going on, definitely as well,
yeah.
You know.
Who was Mark Wright?
He's a military cross. There's a film called Kajafi.
Yes.
Yes, that's Mark.
Incredible film.
Yes, well, that is Mark. He won the military cross he was lying there injured, and I actually spoke to Stuart a few years ago, and he was telling me about that day, because it was obviously a CO, and he was in the ops room, and a lot of different things went on that day, obviously, but not, you know, Mark, he won the military cross, obviously, sadly died. But when you have people bringing insulting the memory of, you know, him, but not only insulting people like Mark, but, you know, the family, but insulting paras by claiming to be a para, but also insulting all forces, because they're Walter Mitty's are just but there was a lot of that went on with this online side, you know what I mean? And obviously, you know, like yourself, we can smell them a mile off when they don't know certain words, and they don't know, they soon give themselves, you soon click on very quickly. It's like, whew.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of that went on with this so-called volunteers as well. A lot of it.
What have you been in documentaries, Alan?
I actually turned down a lot. There was a documentary maker with me he's done a lot of stuff for CNN, some fantastic stuff, actually. He was selling his work on to them. He's done some of the absolutely fantastic. It was one time ISIS surrounded them in this village. And like, you know, Gabriel Chum, he was at my location for maybe 4 months, something like that. But I wouldn't let him film me. I would not let him. Because again, for me, a part of this journey, it wasn't about me. You know, yes, I did some media, as in paper interviews or whatever have you. But again, that's where it would be because of the language barrier. So, you know, like my general would be like, well, you know, you speak English, yeah, do a talk, you know, or when the BBC come down, but the BBC wouldn't focus on me. They'd be focused on the actual, what was going on, the equipment. And my voice was only to pass on, look, you know, look at the equipment we've got. The West's ISIS is 800 meters there. Look at the weapons that the Peshmerga's got. Where's the ammo? Where's the, you know, that sort of thing. So I did a few interviews, you know, like they came on, Orla Gurley actually came on. She came when we were capturing a place called Fazalia. I don't think she realized that how close she was going to be. Like, ID went off just in front, like, and it was only like 40 meters, and this thing was massive. Would have took a tank out, like. But anyway, yeah, sorry, I got off track there. As in for the documentary side, I only did one, and that was with a guy. He did the Robin Hood complex.
Yeah.
He's an ex-Marine.
Yeah, Emil,
yeah. And the only reason, I'd actually said no to him a year before or something, but the only reason...
The reason I ask is I'm sure I've seen you somewhere. Maybe it was in Emil's documentary.
It would have been in Emil's, because he highlighted the trolling and the infighting and stuff that was going on. But the only reason I spoke to Emil is because I had respect, obviously, for him being a former Marine, Afghanistan, and all the rest of this. But also for me, it was the fact that he'd actually turned up on a front line. He was willing to follow us into the attacks and what, you know what I mean? Because obviously him being a documentary maker, you know, so all of that, so that's why I did that one. That's why I gave him, you know, it was out of respect for him being a Marine, him turning up like he did, you know, whereas I wasn't willing to do the other documentaries, no less, because to me it was Yeah, and also the thing with Emil, we were on the final offensive. That was it. That was ISIS finished from Kurdistan, and they were getting finished off in Mosul, which was about 12 kilometers away at that time, because we were doing a cut off. We were cutting off Bashika and all of that from Mosul. So we were cutting. So we had, and as we were going down that way, the Iraqi army was coming up. So there was basically interlinking, and it was all of this. But that's the only documentary I ever done, because it was at the end of it all. And anything before that was taken, for me, it was taken away from, it was taken away from the Peshmerga. It was taken away. Why should it be about me? You know what I mean? You know, we're a team. We're all together. We're all in this. And, you know, I did this, the son turned up, and I says, well, I'll tell you what, because he was like screaming for the interview. I says, well, I'll only do it as long as you're putting Pesh in it. So that's where you'll see a video with me and Guy Ali, for example, because I had to bring in that Pesh. It couldn't be just about you as the Westerner. And too many Westerners actually went on to, it made it about them, not about the issue, not about the guys that you're, you know. It has to be about your unit and, you know, your fellow fighters, your brothers in arms. It can't be, see, yeah, there was that. Sorry, I got off.
Yeah. No.
You know, there's no writing books called Fighting ISIS when you didn't see them. You know what I mean? That's not the case with me. I'll tell you that much for nothing.
Are you writing a book, or have you written a book?
Right.
I think you mentioned that to me when we spoke earlier.
Yeah, right. I'm kind of on Kurdi time, or Kurdi Sahat, as you call it. You know yourself, right, and you have to have a clear head. In the last couple of years, it's obviously been the documentary has just taken up everything. So I have started. I've got like 7 chapters done. A ghostwriter actually came up to see me, and he did a couple of chapters, but he couldn't get it. He couldn't put the reader in your shoes, as you know. That's what you want. You want to put the reader into your shoes. You want to give him the, you know, the happy times, the sad times, the good, the bad, the ugly, as it was, as it is. Yeah. And that's, you know, even during a firefight or ISIS are attacking you, you've just lost a friend. Only you can put somebody in that shoes, because you were there. You're the one that's went through it.
Yeah, we can talk more about that off camera. If anyone wants to write their memoir, just get my free, it's either free or sometimes Amazon charges 99p for it, How to Write a Memoir, and it's all in there. It's for any, I just made it as simple as possible. Everything I did to write, well, I've written three memoirs now. It's a very simple process, and I give people pointers, you know, how to do what you're saying, to put people in the scene. But anyway, I don't want to talk about me.
No, obviously you need to do a bit.
Well,
so you heard him, folks. Chris has got the memoir. You just go and get it.
Yeah, just how to write a memoir. It's, if anyone wants to write their book, just grab a copy of that, and it's a very short read as well, which is never a bad thing. I wanted to ask about these female fighters.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So they're Kurdish women.
Yeah. Join
the Peshmerga, or the YPK, is it called?
No, you've got 2 different groups. You've got in Iraq, Kurdistan, you've got the Peshmerga. In Syria, you've got the YPG, who are now the SDF, the Syrian Democratic Forces, and they basically consist, all sides do, you know, it doesn't matter whether it's a Pesh or the YPG. They all consist of, you know, females, of Christian, of Yazidi, of everybody, you know. So, but they're predominantly Kurdish led, if you know what I mean. But they're not just Kurdish Muslims, they're everybody, because the Kurds are very, very inclusive. It's not about religion, it's about you as a person.
I wanted to ask then, they're professional fighters, aren't they? They're good.
You got to remember, if it wasn't for ISIS, they'd be housewives. They volunteered to fight for their country, for their rights, for their people.
What I'm trying to get a sort of angle on is, and I mean no offense here to anyone whatsoever, but if you were to put your typical British woman on the front line, fighting ISIS, well, for a start, you wouldn't get 99.9% of them there, and that tiny percentage you did, well, they'd probably be quite good and dedicated. I'm sure. Mm-hmm. For the same reason, you're going to get these ones that are going to try out for special forces now. But
bear in mind, you did have one British woman that died fighting for the SDF in Syria.
What's the SDF? Syrian Defense.
Syrian Defense Forces. That's the YPG, but they're now collectively the SDF. But there was a British woman that died fighting.
I'm just wondering if these Kurdish women, do they come naturally to it, or are some of them absolutely useless? How is it?
Right.
And can I just say for everyone that's going to, get the wrong idea, I'm not suggesting every man that rocks up at the front is good.
Far from it.
There's a reason they say Royal Marines 99% need not apply, and that's because 99% couldn't do the job. I'm just fascinated in this. This is a phenomenon, we can say, where these women have gone to the front and they've put up a good old fight, and it's a serious business.
I'll give you a story about one night. ISIS attacked. They were trying to break out their friends who we had cut off. Anyway, in fact, David Eubank was there that night. He could have told you about this one. Daesh started attacking, and pitch black. Shit was hitting the fan. I'm talking rounds were like literally landing, you know what I mean? It was just absolutely mental. Anyway, to the right of me, about 50 meters, was a heap of Kurdish women. Anyway, ISIS are coming in. And I'll not go too much into that one. But anyway, what happened was the Kurdish woman set off one of the ISIS fighters' suicide belts, about 40 meters. It's like sudden. Anyway, next thing, these women started singing. And all you heard in the middle of this firefight, and literally even I was like for a second, like, you couldn't make this shit up. You know what I mean? And they set off this guy, and ISIS was, I'm telling you, they were right on us. You know what I mean? And the biggest fear for us is suicide belts, because the suicide belt is to blow that hole and create that confusion. A bit like at Blitzkrieg, bang, then they all funnel through. But anyway, I'm getting off track again, sorry. For me, that sums up Kurdish women.
Yeah.
That sums them up. They are singing and fighting. And the biggest fear of ISIS is to be killed by a woman, by the way. That is the biggest fear, because they don't go to the 72, you know what I mean? And but for me, that sums up Kurdish women fighters during that. But I've got a friend, she was killed while we were assaulting another place. And but that night for me sums up all Kurdish women, whether it's Peshmerga, whether it's YPG. That for me sums up Kurdish women.
Are they all good then, Alan, or
yes.
Are some of them shit?
I can only go by my own personal experience. I didn't come across any that were shit. I'd actually trust them women more than people I've served with. Yeah. You know, that might sound, but I'm talking about, this is battlefield. You know what I mean? And these women had they're true warriors. And you've got to remember, these women, they're fighting ISIS not only for their country, but for their rights. They don't want to suddenly become, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Slaves, but they're also fighting, and this is a big thing with the Kurds. A lot of people forget this. You speak to anybody on the front lines across there, why are you fighting? You've got to remember this, a lot of these guys didn't get paid for 6-7 months as well. That was another thing. And they didn't see it as only a fight for Kurdistan and for the Kurds, and they saw it as a fight for everybody, but they truly saw it as a fight for the world, because the caliphate had to be stopped there. If it was not stopped there, it would be here next. And it would only have encouraged further recruitment, that had to be stopped there. So they saw themselves, and the women, all of them, they saw themselves as the front line for humanity, for the world. They truly believed that. It wasn't only a fight for them and their country, but for the world.
Yeah.
And I can tell you it was. And these women played a massive part in that. And the world must never forget the sacrifice that not only the Peshmerga, but the SDF have made for us all, because they have paid a high price, Chris. Truly a high price. Truly.
Yes, I bet.
I've lost some good friends, and I'll never forget Simon, a ISIS IED. Someone, that was it. We'd taken it. That was it. Finished. And somebody set off an IED and it killed him. And I'll never forget, we were sitting talking, and he says, someone, Alan, if I get killed, then my family, they will forever, I'll be seen as a hero to my family. But more importantly, I believed in what I was fighting for and fighting against. And I was very close to Simon, actually, because I kind of took him under my wing in a way, but he spoke some English, so that's why we got close as well. And the Kurds have paid a high price in this fight against ISIS. And the airstrikes and everything, I've heard all the arguments, and I've seen parties within the UK vote against them airstrikes. That's another story, but them airstrikes played a major role in supporting those on the ground that were fighting against ISIS. The only thing apart from the women, of course, but ISIS did, and they feared the drone strikes, the airstrikes, big time. If it wasn't for them, the caliphate would still be there. The Kurds on the ground, and also the airstrike support. And I have big arguments about the airstrikes, because you've got the likes of the SNP and Labour that voted against them. Well, I'll tell you what, they say it kills innocent people and all the rest of this. I've seen these airstrikes.
Can we just clarify? Sorry. I wasn't going to go there simply because my knowledge is hazy. Are we talking about the airstrikes on Syria that Donald Trump authorized?
No, this is right. It was airstrikes on ISIS. It wasn't on Iraq. It wasn't on Syria. It was on ISIS.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. I mean, too many people, I've seen this arguments, airstrikes on Syria, airstrikes on Iraq. No, it was on ISIS in Iraq or in Syria. Every single person on the ground, and I'll introduce you to women and children sex slaves who were being held by ISIS underneath on the receiving end of these airstrikes, these drone strikes. And you know something? Not one person was against them airstrikes on the ground. I've said many a time to Yazidi women and children and others, what if you were killed by one of them airstrikes? what if your family was killed by one of them airstrikes? And you know what the reply is? The reply is, it would have been better to have been killed by an airstrike than leave ISIS to continue what they were doing to us. Evil is not beaten by appeasement, basically. There's ex-SAS guy that used that, and I've always stuck that in my head. Robin, I'll never forget that saying, and it's very true. Evil is not beaten by appeasement. And I've never met anybody that was against them airstrikes. Nobody. Yeah. I've had ISIS say it to me in interviews that the difference that they made. They honestly,
I'm confused, Alan, because from the media over here, and I'm not sure even if we're talking about the same airstrikes, it was against the president of Syria's rule. That's how it came across, and that's why I think it caused controversy. I apologies if I've got this wrong.
No. I understand, because it has been a bit confusing, but I'm not being funny. You've had a lot of people like Corbyn and the SNP and what have you that were started screaming in the media, no airstrikes on Syria. It wasn't it was airstrikes on ISIS in Syria. There's a difference. Now, I think the coalition did an airstrike on an Assad base, air base, in retaliation for a chemical attack, to say,
yes,
do not do the chemical attacks. And on the chemicals, I don't know if Dave mentioned a chemical attack we had on us.
No, but can we just clarify that, yes, what you've just described is what the attack that I'm referring to that we saw in the media over here?
It was in retaliation for a chemical attack, and it was basically, I think they hit the base that the attack was launched from, and it was basically a signal to Assad that you can't, to stop. You do another chemical attack, we'll hit you again, we'll hit you harder. But it wasn't specific to taking out Assad and all the rest of this. If the coalition wanted to do that, they could have done it long ago.
Yeah,
Assad's won that war.
It was a strange one-off strike. I think the controversy was, there certainly was an element of people that didn't believe that he had used chemical weapons, that it was just, it was a false flag, basically.
I've spoken to people on the ground, and even people that can't stand you know what I mean? It was. It's quite common across there to be dropping like chlorine bombs or whatever. We had an ISIS attack, and in fact, Dave actually called it into the Americans, and it was a mortar attack, and it was a mixture of chlorine and mustard that they used. And even 24 hours later, you walked near that shell, and again, David can confirm that. ISIS did use chemicals, but they weren't using anthrax and things like that. But they did use a mix of old mustard and chlorine. That went on. Luckily, I don't think they had the experience to be able to do it enough. There's still a lot, but there definitely was chemicals. I've experienced it firsthand. You know, I've got the photos. And as I say, David was there and ended up calling it into American contacts.
But you're saying this was ISIS, though?
That was ISIS. But what I'm saying is that's the chemicals are across there. You know, when Assad's dropping, like, say, a chlorine bomb, a barrel bomb, you know, it's common. They have it across there. And from what I've heard from people that, you know, are both sides of the border, pro and anti, he has used it. Because I meet people that are pro-Assad when I'm in Syria, when I'm in the likes of Kamishlo. You know, you've got a lot of pro-Assad. You're driving through parts of it. You've got Assad forces to the left and right of you. It's crazy. And then you got the Kurds that control another part of the city, Christians that control another part. Yeah, I actually stood there one night at a shop, and the shop owner comes out with a coffee, which is kind of standard across there. You want coffee, you know? And like, and next thing, Assad policeman walks in the bloody shop. We ended up chatting and that. It's a strange setup some places across there. Like it's.
Yeah, it sounds like a sick version of a Monty Python film.
Actually, you're right on that. I don't think I sent you the video because you're going through, right? You got Assad's father and all the flag and all the rest of this. You got Assad checkpoint 10 meters to your right. You got another one 20 meters to the left. And you have to keep going straight on, because if me as a Westerner goes into that area, I'm in Damascus for 3 or 4 months, because they'll arrest you as a journalist, but they'll release you eventually. But obviously it's going to be a pain in the butt. But you have to know where you're going and all this. Like it's a strange setup. But the Kurds have never really attacked. You've got Russian. This is the funny thing about in Syria just now, in the Kurdish area, you've got Russian troops, you've got American troops, you've got Assad's troops. It's a crazy mix across there, like.
Yeah.
But the main thing is, it's like a Monty Python at times. Like, honestly, mate. Yeah, you're right. That's a good one. That actually, I'll have to remember that, bro.
Alan, I'm going to bring our chat to a close now, so we can keep it to a nice 2-hour slot. Hopefully, encourage more people to watch it. Is what I'm trying. Watch our podcast is what I'm trying to say. But I want to finish on the very real possibility that you get overrun when you're there with your weapon on the front line.
Yeah,
I got the impression, I think, from Emil's documentary and the other footage I've seen, that it's obviously your biggest fear is getting overrun.
Yeah.
And I think a while back, we're talking, my memory doesn't serve me well, as you can probably guess, but we're talking maybe about 4 years.
I think it was about 2016, yeah.
Was it photos appeared on Facebook of a young British lad? I think he'd been in some of the documentaries, and he was a sort of, chirpy, squatty sort of thing. And the next thing you know, you're seeing photos of him no longer with us. All quite serious. I mean, the whole thing's bloody serious. You get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, your biggest fear was, for me, obviously, but everybody. I mean, you're not talking just Westerners here. You're talking about everybody. You know, you've got to remember that ISIS saw me as, if they captured a Westerner, you'd be good propaganda for them. You know, you've got to remember that they were doing the same to the Kurdish prisoners as well, the Kurds of the SDF, of the Peshmerga. They were slow, you know, if you, even Iraq army, Syrian army, they'd be slaughtering you. But yeah, if they captured you as a Westerner, you'd be good. You'd be orange jumpsuit, you'd be. And I think, I mean, I can only talk for myself on this. I had a pistol as my backer, and I always had a couple of loose rounds spare in my pocket, because I always said that I would never ever be taken by them. I couldn't put my family through that, but I couldn't give ISIS that satisfaction of using you for their propaganda either.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm only talking for myself, but it was it wasn't something that you thought about. You know, ISIS attack, the last thing on your mind was that, because you knew you were going to go out no matter what. You know, they weren't getting past us. So that was the bottom line. So you were going to fight to the end. But that added bonus for the likes of a Westerner. I saw rumors, and I think, again, this was created by Westerners on Facebook, about 100 grand bounties and all the rest of this. Well, funnily enough, I've obviously got good contacts within intelligence, within the, and news to me, them bounties and what have you.
Mm.
But it wasn't about bounties, and it was about, for me personally, it was never putting your family, letting your family see you on the TV. It was about not letting Daesh use you for their propaganda. So I wasn't, if that was the case for me, I mean, luckily I was, I wasn't put in that position to be able to, but I wouldn't have been taken by them. No.
Yeah.
And I can think all Westerners would probably much along the same lines as that. But I can only speak for myself. But that guy, I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah, brave guy, and total respect to him and his family. And to be honest, any Western that died fighting across there, 100% respect to them, to their families. And they gave up their all. They're the ones that are the heroes. The heroes are the ones that from the Peshmerga, from the SDF to Western volunteers, the ones that died fighting, lost limbs, they're the heroes. The rest of us were just nothing. You know, I had the honor to walk alongside some true heroes. True heroes.
On that point, Alan, I'm going to say thank you so much for telling us your story.
Thank you for asking us as well, Chris.
Well, no, we're going to pick this up again at a later date. You're going to come and give us an update. Maybe we'll even do a live show together and take some questions from our friends at home.
Can I quickly say about the documentary, if you don't mind?
Yeah, you plug whatever you need to.
Right. All I'll say is I've got one of the top production companies. We're in some serious talks at the minute. If you saw BBC, I am going to say the programme because it's public. BBC Panorama, Stacey Meets ISIS Brides. She got nothing.
Yeah.
Is all I'll say. But I'm not in that media clique. You know yourself, Chris, if you're not in that clique. And it's kind of funny because I'm sitting in Camerslaw at night, going into where all these people are trying to get, and I'm listening to them at night bitching that they can't get this interview, they can't get this, and they're all looking down at me because I'm not this press guy that's been to uni. I've not got the degrees. I've not done the degrees on the documentaries, and Channel 4 documentary teams who couldn't get, you know what I mean? And I'm just that, again, it was because I've got belief in what I'm doing. Because for me, the documentary is now the weapon against ISIS as well. It's, the fighting side was a weapon, but now for me, the documentary.
Do you have any social media pages set up yet? Or is that all to come?
I'm not, I've got my Facebook, but I really don't bother too much with that. As you see, I do the odd interview.
People can get hold of you via LinkedIn though, right?
Yeah, by LinkedIn, you know what I mean? But to be honest, I'm not too big on the social media these days. Is I kind of keep it near the time, I'll worry about it.
I was only thinking if anybody wants to get involved in your project, financing that sort of thing, that at least there's a point of contact.
Can I mention the financing, actually? I got no commission up front from any channel. What I can say is I had some support from people, but when you're looking at $800 a day just for the fixer, and you're doing 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks at a time, I've had some fantastic support from some supporters. And financially, it's one in particular, I'll not mention names, but one in particular is financed. I'm talking, it's yourself how expensive this can be to do what you're doing, even sitting there. It's not, you know what I mean? It's so on I don't need anything on that at the minute, but thank you. For mentioning that, but I do have backers on that, and as I say, we're let's just say you're going to be seeing something that you've never seen before. And of course, rescued, I have to say this, mention this. 2 days ago, the Yazidi that I rescued, who was held for 5 years by ISIS, she got engaged to her man. He waited all these years for her. Mm-hmm. And he now does EOD, clearing ISIS mines for a living. So he's a brave guy, but he waited all these years for her. And I cried during part of this journey with her when we were taking her back to her family. And all of us cried, actually. That, you know what I mean? It's, for me, that day made this whole, forget everything else, that made this whole journey worthwhile. And now she's got engaged and she wins. She's a victim that wins. Daesh, they can sit in rotten graves. They can sit in prisons. But she gives hope that that the victims, in the end, the ones that are alive and now back with their families, they've won. ISIS lose. And ISIS will never win. Never.
Alan, thank you very much to everybody at home. I hope you've enjoyed this chat as much as I have. There might be a full-length version on my brand new tube or my BitChute, because I've got a feeling there's certain segments we've had to cut out to go on YouTube. So massive thank you for watching. Big love to you all. If you could like and subscribe, you're going to get more chats like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome, mate. Hello, friend. I hope this finds you well. My name's Chris THRALL. I'm a former Royal Marines Commando, and I fought my way back from chronic trauma and addiction to live, work and travel in 80 countries across all 7 continents, achieving all of my dreams and goals along the way. Now I pass my simple system on to other people, but I can only help you if you like and subscribe. So please do so, because you get one life, and if you live it right, one is enough.